The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, I am pleased once again to present to you our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents Bill of Particulars Fraud Purge continues. But before he begins, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Now, let's receive our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam, Shalom, Vadimakum, Assalamu alaikum. We're going to talk a little bit about Bill of Particulars, and I'm sure that most of you, particularly those of you who are aware of the fundamentals of jurisprudence and our communications in relationship to persons, peoples, entity structures presented as constitutional structures, but coming from a de facto angle, etc. And I'm sure that most of you are aware of the distinction between de jure and de facto structures. So write that down for many of you who have not been grounded in that comprehension, though most of you are well aware of it. However, as I was talking to Dr. Naila earlier, most of the day we were running around, and this is related to ongoing Inquisition operations. One of the difficult things for many people to grasp is the reality of why the operative colonial Europeans who've been operating on our land have consistently suppressed information and relative to their motives, etc. Now, when it comes to persons who have been personating as constitutional officers, which has been the practice here, particularly in North America and in other national jurisdictions too, but particularly we're addressing North America, that has been used as what you might call a jumping board to attack other nation states to continue their unum sanctum and their intercatera divina operations, in which most of you already know the foundation of the world's contemporary politics is unum sanctum. Now, relative to one who would rebut or come from treaty enforcement, and in relationship to persons who are claiming, though we know they're de facto, to be officers of the United States, etc., a rebuttal or a counter move or an instrument in the nature of an estoppel logically would come from the office or from the desk of the vizier or minister in diversity, relative to the people of the land, etc. And as a reminder, we must keep in mind the motivations and the motives as to why during the Eisenhower administration, when consular court venue and jurisdictional operations at Morocco, North America, were in a sense, in some public notice, relinquished, etc. Logically, it is a well-known fact that many men and women who were put in power to make law and to enforce law relative to the Aboriginal indigenous people, and that that can be demonstrated and as documented in the Constitution and bylaws of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, and also the Moorish Science Temple of America. Now, keep in mind, the Moorish Temple of Science is a civic organization evolving out of the old Canaanite temple set up by Noble Drew Ali and a few others who were helpful in structuring that platform for the restoration of the lost estate of the Asiatic Moors. And of course, you already know, for those of you who do research, you have COINTELPRO operations and infiltrations into all orders or social structures that were put in place to aid and to support or to uplift Aboriginal peoples, as that is counter to the Constantinian order of the secret societies for suppression of humanity and for the reconstruction of history and the chronology of the peoples of the land. However, knowing that over a period of time it is necessary for humanity to ascend, that certain concepts must be with them in their cognate mindset, in their social constructs, and in their activities. And so with the Bill of Particulars, and particularly the way it's structured, it would be in the nature of a rebuttal and an estoppel, but also the conversation or the presentment would be also hinged upon the principles of a mandamus and the principles of a warranto, etc., which most of you are pretty much familiar with. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And as a reminder, keep in mind the from a political destructive position, why it has been so necessary for the hybrid Europeans who've been occupying North America and pretending to be Americans for quite some time. It is solidified the misconception that their political operations of Satanists from their synagogues of Satan, they have been promoting it as a country. And so just as a reminder, as we talked to you before, we want to show you the articles of incorporation last filed. And keep in mind, when you do research on Noble Drew Ali, as the people of the land begin to become more associated and less confused about the inherited birthright of the peoples of the land and of their consanguinity, etc., in relationship to their American bloodlines, etc., it became necessary for the hybrid Europeans to continue the control of the narrative. And so, as Noble Drew Ali, as you all know, in 1925, registered the Moorish Temple of Science as a civic organization to advance the comprehension of civics in relationship to the people of the land, as the people of the land have been held back or outside of the jurisprudence principles of diversity operations from a proper platform that is structured for diversity all over the world, and that would be a consular venue in relationship to both peoples and property. So, in fact, by law and by right of law, by right of process, and by right of due process, the motives as to why the administrators under the Eisenhower administration, while relinquishing jurisdiction at Morocco, they began to promote the 14th Amendment straw man code system of civil rights, etc., under the guise of bringing the conquered people into their admiralty jurisdiction or their ship of state under a color of law and with a color of authority, with the idea, a colored idea of citizenship, which by its very nature and structure was designed and is designed to actually continue the theft of their birthright, as well as to continue the administrative powers of their personated corporation operations that has been perpetrated as a country. Now, as one of the good brothers sent me another copy of the Articles of Confederation, and we used to pass this out to the people years ago. And so we're going to show you Articles of Incorporation for many of you who have not been aware of the fact that what you have been trained in the animal husbandry training operations of Sigmund Freud and John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates of the General Education Board, that the colonial operation structure of the secret societies of the Jesuit order, who are actually the owners of the United States Corporation, and have perpetrated the fiction that the United States is a country. We will show you their Articles of Confederation 1925. So keep this. This was the last time they reincorporated, again, continuing their unum sanctum and a doctrine of discovery operations, which most people have been operating under the assumption that the doctrine of discovery and that the unum sanctum operation bulls of the Church of Rome, of Constantine, and the Satanists, the synagogue of Satan, that it had been dissolved under the guise of ending slavery, as they call it, in the 1865 era. So, can you get a good picture of this?
See it.
Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want you all to see the first page. Now, take a screenshot so that you all can read this. Is that?
That's not clear. Let's see.
This way?
Let's come a little further out. No, it's just, it's small print.
Yeah, but they can probably pull it up. If they
tilt it down, the back
this
portion.
Way?
Yeah, and then come forward with it. I don't know. See it. Yeah, it's there, but I don't know if they can read it. It's there.
All right. Now, I'm going to read some of this to you so that those of you whom this information was held back from, keep in mind, and this is with all due respect and not personal to anyone, although some people will be personally offended when the people are made aware that they had not been telling you these things when they should have. Particularly, this goes for any so-called civic or community organization, and this goes for all your bishopric or clergy, etc., all of whom have this information and had this information. However, because of certain compromisions, they continued the narrative of the reconstruction history and chronology at North America, knowing that it was under constant attack and alteration, or what is known as reconstruction, etc., that it would also expose many of them who have actually been bleeding off of our people parasitically under the guise of making deals or communications of alleged legitimacy with the de facto operators of the Circle Church and Chancery, which you've been told were so-called congressmen, senators, governors, mayors, etc., with application structures distinguished from notification structures, which should have been. Being that these people are the nationals of the land and are not U.S. citizens, never were and never can be, all communications should be coming from the ministers or the viziers under the principle of the diversity of venue, logically enforced on them by obligation and duty via Article 3, Section 1 and Section 2, and by those among our own people who are put in power to make law and to enforce law. And those principles of law and civics are to be known by all the nationals of the land and all of the nationals or members of any civic organization, so that the confusion as to how and why and what's the basis of our communications with the occupational powers should be. And therefore, the distinction between an application of any communication and the proper position of a lawful notice or a declarative statement coming from the vizier ministers who, by principle of structure, were put in power to make law and to enforce law. And of course, we don't have to get into that. The fact that that has not taken place is well established.
May I interrupt?
Go ahead.
Interject? Just for sake of clarity, because the subject is about the fraud of the Bill of Particulars, can we start with what a Bill of Particulars is? Basically, the definition that I put on the promo you said was their definition.
No, it's fundamentally proper. However,
and when would that come into play?
That would come into play. That would be in the nature, like, say, for instance, if someone makes a claim against you, right, or vice versa, and you already know that the principles of diversity in a consular venue, if there's a controversy that would arise, is in general, and in perpetuity until such time that the people dissolve the treaties. As an example, when you say principles of diversity, what do you mean for those who may not understand that? The principles of diversity. All right, let's bring it to simplicity,
please.
Most of our people have been loosely familiarized with the social engineering operations of what they would call branding. And those who were a little more grounded in comprehending governmental structure and jurisprudence in relationship to interchange or intercourse between nation states, etc., it would be an issue of diversity. And a violation of diversity, or whereas an attack or violation of treaty and constitution would be whereas a belligerent occupier or a belligerent party in a treaty agreement would deliberately start altering the principles of the agreements, and whereas with the intent of stealing or robbing or continuing occupation would rename peoples, lands, territories, alter calendars, alter history, misname, introduce connotative linguistics, all these things you're familiar with right now. And so in layman's terms, most people would say, well, what are some of the brands that were put on the Aboriginal peoples of North America that the common people are familiar with? Terms like Negro, Black, Colored, Indian, people of color, all terms and statuses that will remove the people from the pedigree, identity, and their consanguine relationship to their forefathers and foremothers, by which or under whom treaty structures were constructed. Meaning, like say for instance, say as an example, if China, Manchuria or Tianyi, we're talking about the people, not the corporate entity, had a treaty with Russia, as an example, right? And then people from Russia, for whatever, this is hypothetical, purposes of intruding or violating the people by conquest purposes or subterfuge, etc., start calling Chinese light-skinned yellow guys. But the treaty is Chinese. And convince the people of Manchuria or China or the different tribes, the extended African tribes that anciently peopled that area, convince them to agree to be light-skinned yellow people, dark-skinned yellow people, and it don't mean what color you are. That would be branding. But the effect of that would be it would remove the other party from obligation to the treaty by appearance of tacit acquiescence on the part of the beneficiary or the heir party who lost knowledge of their pedigree and thus adopted the brands and therefore relinquished a right of claim to their estate. And this is essentially what happened at North America.
Interjection. There are some that say that the treaties that we refer to,
there's multiple treaties.
Some of the ones that, Treaty of Peace and Friendship, for example, does not say Moorish American.
Of course it doesn't.
Yeah. So is Moorish American sort of going away from what's actually?
No, that's a political, and this is where people need to really have a greater understanding of what has been taking place, because keep in mind the different regencies and provinces of the empire have been constructed or diverted into other alleged nation states, particularly in the early to mid 1800s. And so many so-called nation states at Iberia, which you would call Europe now, are actually part of the Moorish Empire, not just parts of East of Mexum that you know is Africa today, or Southeast of Mexum, Southeast Africa, which is South America, the Olmec civilization, which would be the Yucatan Peninsula, or what you would know Central America, and of course the Northwest or the Maghreb, which you know as North America, Morocco, etc. And so this is back to, by political necessity, the hybrid Europeans constantly doing what they refer to loosely as reconstruction. Now, people who are not aware of the real history here are not aware of both the reality of architecture and of books and of cultures that were being destroyed even up into the 1900s to actually lock out the actual history here. That includes architecture, that includes names of different tribes, of Moors or different nations, as we call ourselves. And so the nations are particularly of the Maghreb, are actually what you call extended families. And then when you're looking at the political structures, etc., particularly in relationship to the bleached out Moors, etc., and this would be the Picts, the Moors and the Dubs, i.e. the true Aboriginal peoples of Iberia, or what you know as the Iberia Peninsula, who are also to a great extent genocided out. And so when they tell you about Iberia, they will not mention Iberia so much, the peninsula, they will just say Europe. This is so that the people in their minds in relationship to Iberia don't reattach themselves to the stolen lands of Iberia that are now under what we call German Dutch political jurisdiction of the priesthood, etc., particularly of the Satanists. Now, among those who really understand or comprehend some of the conflicts that have been with us over the years, they would know of say Hannibal, Barca Bey, Hasdrubal, his brother, the Punic Wars, the War of Poitiers near France, or the Franks, etc. And so when the hybrid Europeans reconstruct the history, they will refer to the Canaanite Moabites, or they'll say loosely, the Moors coming into Europe and invading, as opposed to telling the truth that they were restoring civilization principles at Iberia that had been overrun by the Visigoths and the Goths, i.e. the hybrid Europeans. And so the concepts that people have via reconstructed history is that the hybrid Europeans are the people of the land of Iberia or Europe, when in fact that's not true at all. And this is why even in these later years, as people have become more aware of the true history, and many Europeans, particularly at North America, because the middle class has been dissolved out of anger and out of spite, they've been revealing a lot of their secret society truth history that has been held from the masses, and telling the truth about the United States Corporation Company, about the operations in Europe, etc. The secrets of them, the hybrid Europeans using the world fairs, etc., as an excuse to take credit for the ancient structures here at North America and around the world, as well as rationalizing the tearing down of many structures to also hide the history and the fact that many of the buildings and the architecture that they destroyed during the so-called world fairs, etc., were really ancient Moorish or Canaanite Moabite buildings, very ancient here at North America. And this is also why you'll see the scholars not talk about the fact that most of your world's pyramids are actually at the America. And so most of the time when we're looking at world geography, our minds immediately goes to Hikupta, or what you call Egypt, only on the east side. And even the dating given to the masses about the structures at Africa on both sides of the water are contemporary, in fact, deliberately to reconstruct or to divert the people from the truth that these structures are even far beyond more ancient than that they have been telling you. And so the branding principle is to rename the people and the lands in order to create what is known as disassociation, to disconnect the people mentally from not just the land, but from the culture and the principles of their ancient illustrious forefathers, and to take on the psychology that the limited advanced or technologies, advanced sciences, though many of them have been corrupted or renamed and accredited to people to whom it does not belong, you'll find that the advancements that have been prevalent in what is known or constructed as so-called Western culture, etc., is has root in the early to mid 1800s on up. And as you know, without doubt, that you have not seen any real, what you would call technical advancements since then. Because the fact of the matter is that the esoteric sciences of the ancient Asiatic Africans did not begin with the hybrid Europeans, and therefore the taking of credit of technologies existing and also hiding other technologies, etc., for which they have taken credit for. You can see that the spirit of that esoteric mind, of the ethereal thinking, of quantum physics thinking, quantum physics or quantum communication, with the accelerated intensity of vibratory mental communications, etc., which is common amongst Asiatic Africans, but suppressed, you'll see that for the most part, does not have its root in the hybrid Europeans, which is why you see no more advancements. But also at the same time, you will see that many of the hybrid Europeans who have held back a lot of technological information, their motive has been, for the most part, to do what they refer to as their break-off society. And as we talked about previously, which they revealed in Executive Order 11490, Technical Manual, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, where they had been for quite some time deliberately devouring the people of the land, and which is the parent, that's what they'll refer to it as that, and actually doing what you call break-off societies. And because this, some of this information is beginning to come out around the world, it has created quite a problem for them. And so the hybrid Europeans have been pushing the brand systems, you know, like you'll see the Black Lives Matter type thing, and it seems like it's sympathetic for the people, when actually it's MK Ultra mind control operations and COINTELPRO in its operation to restore the control of the narrative and the people, because as the people begin to reconnect in their intuitive mind, which we talked about, you know, some months ago, actually nature takes her course, because the collective knowledge of the forefathers is actually coded within the energy field, or we would call, in general for the masses, DNA, but we would call it actually the ethereal field, and also referred to by some esoterics as the Akashic records, and by some esoterics as the higher planes of life, by some esoterics as the higher dimensions. All of them generally associate or imply the natural, it's not artificial, the natural activation, not unlike a seed in earth with the moon, Venus, and the sun activating them, that springs forth the energies or the memories of your forefathers. And this is what you would call cell memory. And much has been done to suppress that natural, see, it's not artificial, progression. The dark priesthood are well aware that, as we've talked many times, you all know, and many of you know who are actually esoterics, etc., and are really aware of the ancient religions. We're not talking about the dogma systems that have been presented as religion. So keep in mind that as just as fiat of the dark priesthood and the Satanist Luciferians has been operative via the Federal Reserve, etc., particularly accelerated since 1913, you will see that people's concepts about the reality of their political operations has been skewed. And so people have a tendency not to relate those activities that they would consider contemporary in their nature. They don't look at them as actually ongoing operations of unum sanctum, inter caetera divina, and dum diversas, etc. But that is in fact what's going on. And so just like we look at fiat and people becoming cognate of the fact that the members of the Circle Church and Chancery for generations have been stealing our gold all around the world. Your concept of their continued stealing of your estates, etc., would be to counter them when they're continuing it. Like as an example, as we talked a couple weeks ago when we talked about the Federal Reserve operations and the concept. See, because you don't have to use the same language, but the concept of comprehending who they are not, who you are not, the proper venues that has been suppressed on the people's cognates of the general and permanent laws in force that have been deliberately ignored and also diverted by people among your own who were set among our own people to bleed us economically more under the pretext of bringing us into a what you would call a communication directive with the hybrid Europeans under the guise of the United States as if it was a country, etc. And while they know that these are actually Satanists and Luciferians, sometimes referred to as Satan, Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. All these terms are in reference to the members of the Circle Church and Chancery and their political systems that have been set up around the world, and in relationship to their practices of world conquest. And this is why another cover for those operations would be called European colonialism. All right. So now let's get into bills of particulars, because this would be in the nature of your arguments or rebuttal. And in the nature of the bill of particulars, it would have in its character, if you listen carefully, a quowanto, a mandamus. Now, of course, the mandamus would not be in its entirety. Bill of particulars in general, as a general rule, to give you or to share with you some comprehension of the frame of thought or the frame of mind that you would be operating in, etc.
They said no sound. Can you hear us? Let me see.
We good?
I think put a yes if you can hear it. Okay, can you hear us? Yes.
You're good? All right.
Yeah, that was my mistake, you all. That was something I did.
All right. Now I have in here also an estoppel that I was going to read to you, but I'll save that.
I put definitions in for estoppel and a couple of things.
Yes.
They're going to pop on co-warrant.
So they should keep those things in mind, and in due time, we'll be discussing those things in the future in a more detailed manner. But of course, many of you who are operative in the different Moorish science temples, etc., probably in your Wednesday class, and sometimes in Sunday school, they will break down those principles. Not all of them, but as a fundamental rule of operation that you might see. Excuse me, just a minute. I'm bringing up Bill of Particulars. And keep in mind, I'm going to read while this is pulling up. I'm going to read because it's deliberately acting slow because they keep backdooring us. I'm going to read the first page of United States Incorporated. Now, this is filed in the office of the Secretary of State of the state of Florida, the 15th day of July, 1925, right? and the Secretary of State was Crawford. Keep that in mind. This book A-1, page 9. Certificate of Incorporation of United States Corporation Company. The name of the corporation is the United States Corporation Company. 2. The nature of the business and the objects and purposes proposed to be transacted, promoted, or carried on by the corporation are as follows: to prepare or cause to be prepared and procure, to be filed, recorded, registered, published, issued, or granted in accordance with the law, articles or certificates of incorporation, applications for letters patent, charters, and other instruments relating to the incorporation and organization of of corporations and joint stock companies. Now, I'm going to pause there because I want you to write this down. Joint stock companies. So keep in mind joint stock and the companies. Now, I want to present this to you because many of you have not known this, is that these operatives who have been representing themselves as so-called U.S. government politicians have denied the construction of joint stock corporate entities to the people at large, and has allowed it only for themselves and for their corporate body, curia members of the Lawyers Guild, etc., to do this practice. And this has much to do with them stealing people's estates, with them fraudulently registering people's cars to themselves through their state corporations, making them thinking that it was country records for the people, etc. All of these frauds they have been doing for some time. So keep that in mind. If any of you ever approached setting up a joint stock operation, you would see the extreme resistance that you would get from these people who are claiming to be government, including all kinds of threats and other direct and indirect injuries. But yet they have done it. Now, to prepare, this is ongoing with their corporate company operations. To prepare or cause to be prepared and to procure, to be filed, recorded, registered, published, and all of these words, look them up in your law book and get a very solid comprehension of it. Issued or granted certificates, reports, statements, applications for licenses to do business or other instruments in relationship or in relation to domestic and foreign corporations, companies, or associations. To provide and to maintain domiciliary and other offices and facilities for corporations, companies, and associations.
Does that mean whenever someone forms a corporation and goes through
them with an application?
With an application, now they have joint ownership in it.
Not joint ownership. You have transferred the estate to the Circle Church and Chancery and to the Popes of Rome under unum sanctum, and they own your estate. This is again why we've been emphasizing to people, if they really comprehend why Noble Drew Ali did.
Is that why he went through the county?
Exactly.
That's why I was going to ask you. Is that why the prophet went through the county?
He used their system. He used the system, their system, to actually set up and to counter move, i.e., the operations of the corporate United States corporate body politic, taking advantage of the people who had yet to be made aware of what they're even dealing with. This is why he said the half has not been told. If I told you everything, you go back to sleep. Mm-hmm. And he also say, I want brave men and women. Why? Because once you see how ugly this thing is, punks can't handle it. Sellouts. That's why you see so many sellouts. Because when the pressure comes, most of them are already bought off.
Well, you have those that are saying, oh, well, Prophet Noble Drew Ali incorporated of the temple, and so therefore,
Yes.
but they don't understand the difference or understand the
It's
difference
chess. It's political
between
chess.
county, which is
Yes, not just county.
well, what he did and what
Yeah.
everybody else is doing today.
And this what must be on.
But it's not a 501c3.
No, and this what must be comprehended. When Drew Ali set up the Old Canaanite Temple and the Moorish Temple of Science, the Republic platform was still in order, although it was waning. Then you had a whole body of people whom he was calling to order, who had no foundation knowledge of civics, who had no operative, functional knowledge of civic or birthright or estate or trust. All of these things,
and largely coming out of the church,
from the church, mosque, and synagogue.
Yeah.
You know, they came from all walks of life. And when you study, particularly when you look in the FBI papers and you look at the infiltration that took place, you'll see motive, but you'll also see why he constantly told the Moors the half has not been told. This is so that we wouldn't become stagnant or fixed or thinking that we knew it all because we have, participating in organized body, which is necessary. And he would also project, he said, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers. Now, logically, as soon as you do, you'll start recognizing as an example. Whereas, as an example, this is in the literature, right? We organized as the Moorish Temple of Science in the year 1925 and were legally incorporated as a civic organization under the laws of the state of Illinois, November 29, 1926. But the organized as the Moorish Temple of Science in the year 1925. Now, logically, that created problems for the operatives who were actually being belligerent. And then keep in mind, when the Circle Church and Chancery members, upon Drew Ali setting up the Old Canaanite Temple officially, although it was operative 3 or 4 years earlier, in truth, this was the official setup, was in 1913. And keep in mind, you'll notice the correlation that the Circle Church and Chancery members met off Jekyll Island and they set up the Federal Reserve, 1913. Now, Drew Ali set up the civic organization, 1925. They incorporate 1925. These are chess moves. And people who get caught in emotions or personality, if you get the point, get diverted from looking at the facts, looking at research, looking at motive, looking at the politics, looking at war records. It's important to look at war records, etc. And then you have a whole different concept of what's going on. And as you already know, Dr. Nail, over the years, as we've been telling the people that the United States is not a country, it's a corporation, you notice that much of the opposition to our position has come from people who were considered scholars and conscious. Until as of recent years, where the hybrid Europeans have been exposing the information and they can no longer lie. However, it's forced many of them out of hiding among us and have to admit that they're actually at enmity with Noble Drew Ali's program. They'll attack him personally, but keep in mind the program is for the uplifting of fallen humanity. But what it does, and we knew that this would take place, is that it started exposing. See, once you comprehend the real politics of the operations of the Circle Church and Chancery and start losing your naivety, it exposes by virtue of your enlightenment the people around you that you trusted. You see? But people who already know this know how to see these people anyway. But you've got to work with some of these people to get things done. Because we keep in mind, just like any con artist, they got to promise you something in order to get your trust. And then they come out later with, you discover that their only mission is to get in your pockets, if you get the whole point. And then as people become even more cognate or conscious, these same people, this is why you see a lot of these people who had been pretending to be supportive of getting our people out of this crap, you'll see them slyly or on a down low and being forced to be more directly to admit that they're at enmity with Jolly and the program, you see. And they'll make it personal rather than pay attention to the fact that when they're attacking the program operations, they're actually attacking the people. Well, people are getting pretty much aware of that now. And so this creates more of a problem with them. So in the nature of response and request and of demand, so a point of reference of a bill of particulars would be actually a rebuttal of their position, you see. And so a rebuttal of their position would be in this nature. And of course, in the rule of, because they're operating, keep in mind, they're operating on the piracy principles, or what you would call admiralty maritime, i.e., however, their operations is to deceptively confuse the people with law, that's land jurisdiction, air jurisdiction, right, and water jurisdiction. And so when you're dealing with the aggregate constructs of Midgard or the earth and the hybrid Germanic tribes claiming to own all humanity under unum sanctum, they have to contaminate what is there, if you get, because they have actually, in fact, produced very little to nothing, meaning that their wealth, their power control has come from deception and theft, not from something that they've created themselves. However, in the process of hiding a lot of ancient Asiatic African history and culture and altering the world, they will also attribute negative connotations to both the symbolisms and the cultural structures and customs of the ancient ones, so that as the people begin to wake up a little bit, they would start rejecting their own culture, thinking it's coming from the synagogue of Satan, thinking it's their stuff when they've created very little. They just corrupt everything.
The rituals and practices of our people.
Yes. Now, and keep in mind, they always use dark side, and this is why you see this paradigm taking place actually around the planet right now, or at Midgard. There's this consistency of the revelation of secret societies, the symbolisms of signs, etc. But there's one key that people need to comprehend. You know, in the principle of etheric physics or quantum physics, also in the principle of what is presented to the people as what they would call normal scientific physics, etc. What has a front has a back. Now we're talking about manifest, and we're talking about the physical manifest as an example. And so what they do, they will take Asiatic African culture and systems and use it in the dark. And keep in mind, a lot of what has been assumed to be in the dark is not so much dark magic in the sense that people would think it is. It is so much that the rulers and the conquerors of the bishopric of Rome, via their secret societies, have hidden so much ancient technology from the people and have been actually operating in what you would call a break-off social structure.
They call them breakaway
society. Breakaway social structure. They've been doing that. You know, however, spiritually, because those ancient sciences and the ancient religious cultures did not originate with them, they can only go so far with it. And plus, they're most of the time, and this doesn't mean, because people will take it wrong and think that every hybrid is operating from a negative, and that's not necessarily true. It is actually a select group of them from the priesthood who have been hiding behind certain religions as their hiding place to actually, because actually they're Satanists and Luciferians. And this is back to the point of why, like, say, as an example, when you see, like, they'll write in history the battles between the Christians and the Saracens. So the Saracens is a cover word for the Moors, right? and the Christians in the rewritten history is a cover word for the Constantinians. So the people who have been actually going to and fro the earth, devouring nations under the guise of the Christian Crusades were in fact really not Christians. They're in fact Constantinians, and they're Satan worshippers, Satanists and Luciferians. Now, from among their own, you have certain conflict that's going on now, actually around the world, and this is where some of your Satanists who, by practice, do what you call maintain sacrifice. Now, we don't have to get into the details. Most of you know about what's happening with little people that's been going on for quite some time, including extracting their essence. Now, you have some Luciferians that don't have that practice, although they do have or maintain the practice of negatively stagnating human development, both politically and spiritually. So to that degree, they have what you call an alliance. But then you have the conflict that's occurring with them, with many of them are not, don't palate the human flesh type thing.
And you saw that sort of played out in the Dark Crystal, especially in the remake. Yeah.
And the Dark Crystal is a pyramid.
Right.
Not accidental.
You also see this played out in this new Eternals movie.
Yeah, the higher self and the lower self.
They're just telling you what's going on. Yeah.
Now
there's a question out here.
Go ahead.
Because this person wants. It's not this viewer wants to know. Can you speak about statelessness and stateless Moors and Moorish subjects?
This is what's happening. What you see playing out. This is what's playing out now as we speak, particularly in, say, maybe the last 10 years or so, right? Although the operative evolution of these things becoming more and more to the surface have been going on for quite a few decades, with many men and women of the land who have been loyal to the principles set forth by Prophet Noble Ali for the redemption of our people, and in principle, and have built upon those principles to go out and save the nation, as you might say. And then you have others along the way who have been within the fold, but whose down low mission was to misdirect, to drain the economics, to subvert, to divert, to create divisions, but give a face of support. All of these things are unfolding now. All of this is unfolding now. And so you will see this played out in like a theater in the politics, even though those who are playing these political games, most of them are indeed not truthfully constitutional officers whatsoever. They have no, conscience as to being in opposition of treaties and constitutional enforcement, as they have never been supportive in the first place. The paradigm that's happening is that by people becoming more and more conscious of what should have been, and this has much to do as to why certain things we have presented to the people over the years to get them in a frame of mind of where our thoughts should be in our communications of political intercourse with persons who have, which we knew were actually imposters. However, they are the only picture that the people see, if you get the point. Now, what's Happy the Clown is the image that they see. But in order to find out that Happy the Clown is a fraud, they have to interface with him. However, and so we would present like bills of particulars, quo warrantos, mandamuses, estoppels, rebuttals, etc., to help our people come into the right frame of mind of proper method of communication, and knowing that the people were growing into this, while many others were also growing into the different paradigms of the constant political changes that were made with minor technological tweaking, but not real technological exposure, while the dark priesthood were also doing their constant social engineering to maintain narrative power over the people. And these areas have been in a constant flux, which you see right now. And this is why we always tell the people over the years, some of the things that we're doing now we'll not be doing later, because we didn't want them to get locked into thinking that because we would do bills of particulars or affidavits of fact or writs in the nature of response and request and demand, thinking that taking that we would get to a point where the de facto operators of the United States Corporation Company, operatives who've been pretending to be government, would all of a sudden honor the treaties and all of a sudden honor the Constitution. No, we knew they wouldn't, because they won't and they can't. You know, everything that's created in a fraud remains in a fraud. However, because our people have been held outside of the proper venues of political intercourse and understanding the general and permanent character of treaties, and even with the treaties superseding the Constitution, but yet the Constitution for the United States binding those who claim to be officers to their obligations of the treaties, etc. The cognizance of that, what should have been and what should be, is presented to the people for their awakening. But of course, as they awaken and become more cognizant of what should be and what should have been, they, by virtue of that cognizance, start rejecting the agency platforms that have been constructed deliberately for diversionary tactics, as well as the general misinformation to remove the people from a consanguine concept of self to a jus sanguinis, or a judicial or a legislated, colorable legislated concept of their status, and muddy the water, which they have been doing quite successfully for quite some time. But knowing that people would gradually become aware of these tricks, that the people would start justly and correctly rejecting and rebutting the agency, associate entity or organizations put out in the society's structure, with the pretext that they were actually doing what you would call public service for the people, when actually they're part of the unum sanctum theft operations, which they absolutely are. So when you're talking about stateless persons and the position of a stateless person, you would talk about denationalization. Now that's back to the branding issue. Why? And those of you who know, most of you already know what a nom de guerre is. So nom de guerre is the law term relative to a pseudonym, and particularly what we call a war name or corporate construct name, or a brand in its official, as opposed to lay term function and structure. And so this is again why from a what you would call a countermeasure, Noble Drawley say, know of your higher self and your lower self. Now it goes on multi levels. And then he says, you're not Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian, etc. Then you'll know the distinction between geographical super severe operations in relationship to Ethiopia as a word and apply to us, and as the brandings to actually denationalize you, which would create what is known as stateless person status. And then, of course, if you have a being that has no political state, and of course they got a brand and no such people exist, and they're operating in society, they would be, by virtue of that default operation, designated a person of color or artificial person. And yes, and so such person would be basically a stateless person, and also designated a ward of the state. Write that down. So look up wardship tenures in your law book. Now, in fact, when law is enforced, i.e. treaties and constitution, etc., the traded places, which has happened, because remember when they occupy a nation state, what they do, they create what you call is an interrectum structure. And this is where you have people who are pretending temporarily to be the sovereigns, while the true sovereign is either at rest, exiled, laid dormant, etc. And this is what has been going on. And so these operations that have been going on necessitated them to structure into their agency societies the 14th Amendment person, which many of you already know, and some of you refer to from a law perspective and a legal operative perspective, man of straw, straw man, etc. 14th Amendment, all of these relative to a corpse or the dead. Also, civil liter mortuus, and these would be beings or peoples who have been denationalized. Now, more subjects would be people in general, all people at Morocco who have no, or who cannot prove for fact by identity, national identity of another state or political association with another state, if they're in Moorish territories, by virtue of that fact in international law, they are ipso jure, or by as all law stands, Moorish subjects, etc. And in fact, the hybrid Europeans who have been sanctioned under treaty, etc., to do business at North America are in fact Moorish subjects. All persons and all peoples without a nationality who are domiciling on the land at Maghreb are Moorish subjects. This must be comprehended. And this is why it is important for people to know the distinction between what is known as jus soli status and jus sanguinis status, citizenship status, and national status. Although the national, as far as civic constructs, in conversation of civics is concerned, it would be spoken of in the same nature or platform. A national is not a citizen. So, you look at that. And when you look at Noble Drali talking about teaching our people to be better citizens, etc., you must know when you're nationalized, etc., that that's actually in what you would call an AA status, distinguished from an A1 to the designated A19 classifications of citizens. So an AA would be the Aboriginal or national of the land, and of course that such being would not be the national standing is a birthright thing or birthright issue distinguished from a privilege. And this is why it's important when you're looking at Moorish nationals and then you're looking at Moorish subjects, you would make sure that you're cognate in the classifications of what you call citizens in relationship to nationals. So if you're talking national, you're talking about AA status. If you're talking about citizens, then that would be A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, A7, A8, A9, A10, A11, A12, A13, A14, A15, A16, A17, A18, A19. And all of those would be dealing with the principles of social political interchange on international law principles. As an example, like say if someone from another political jurisdiction goes into another political nation's jurisdiction, say as a student or as a worker for some period of time, what you all may have heard of as green cards, etc., and cards like that, or IDs for international exchange, they would have numeration on them coming from A1 on up to A19, based on the status, the nationality, the treaties, the intercourse between the nations, etc., designating your purpose or the purpose of the being to be in a different political territory, etc. and that would be designated on the green card from A1 to A19. This is why those of you who are aware of what Noble Drew Ali did in relationship to the right of claim or reversion of a state, you'll see that your Moorish ID has AA. And that AA means national, distinguished from citizen. And of course, if you're a citizen, you're subject to that political jurisdiction. Whereas Moors, just like any other people who are in honor of their mothers and fathers, you would be in divine rule sovereign. So when you're talking sovereign, that's not a political designation given to you or granted to you. That is divine in its nature. And people need to know that. And one of the things that you'll see a lot of the dark priesthood and the Satanists do in their animal husbandry training of docility would present sovereignty in a constructive conversation as if it's a negative or someone actually doing something criminal. Because the real deal is their missionary work is the dissolution of families and what you call conquest construction. This is why you will see them constantly attack anyone that even uses the word sovereign or treaty or constitutional enforcement. That's why you see the motive. And it's back to, once you comprehend what you're dealing with, you'll comprehend why you do bills of particulars when you're communicating with them. So
here's a question.
Excuse me. You'll have to excuse me with this because this thing is freezing up. So I'm going to now in relationship, because remember when you're talking to them, these are keep in mind once you comprehend that you're simply talking to corporate, private, foreign, for-profit, human trafficking, corporate officers of private corporation and not legitimate government, you will think different. This is another reason why we're presenting to you, because this is documented. And this goes for those among us who have been indirectly and openly trying to undermine the mission of Noble Drew Ali under the guise of helping the people, when actually, once you do a little research, you'll find that it's COINTELPRO operatives. And of course, some of them are MK Ultra, which most people have been and have not been made aware of it. So anyway, Moorish National Republic, federal government, Moorish Divine and National Movement, Societas, Republica al Moroccanos, Northwestern Mexico, Northwest Africa, North America, the North Gate, the true Aboriginal and Indigenous people, natural peoples of the land. And this is in relationship to Bill of Attainder, 29, $10,000 in specie, lawful money, letter of marque, for international tort and violations of treaty 1786, 1787, 1836, Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Moroccan Empire. And so when you're talking the empire, you're talking about the political territories, as you will see in your Circle 7. So you would be talking in relationship to Chapter 47. So many of you who are less aware, go to Chapter 47 in Circle 7, and I'll just read a few chapters, a few surahs in that chapter to put you in political concept of the counter move relative to Bill of Particulars. So Chapter 47, right? Capital Empire of the Dominion of Africa. The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. 2. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. 3. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Lamexon, the first true and divine name of Africa, the dividing of the land between the father and the son. 4. The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. 6. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire, with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. Their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa, across the great Atlantis, even unto the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands. Before the great earthquake, which caused the great Atlantic Ocean, and of course you would see the map of Mexamites, ancient Moabites, and the separation of the world was also known as the Great Super-Severe. So anyway, just reading that part, you will see the geographical boundaries of the Moroccan Empire. And so when you're dealing with the treaties with the Moroccan Empire, it applies to both sides. It applies to Americana, that would be the islands. And so now you have a greater concept as to the motivation of the hybrid Europeans in their conquest to burn cities, literally, to bomb cities, literally, to bomb people who would reject unum sanctum operations, not unlike they did with many of the Asiatics at North America who became cognate or did anything to counter unum sanctum operations, even families. And many of you are not unaware of what they did even in recent years at Shakamoxon territory, Philadelphia, when they bombed and murdered brothers and sisters in Strawberry Mansion area of Philadelphia. And then at that same time, they issued the motu proprio, not the motu proprio, I apologize, the non-protunct document implying from the chambers of the House at Philadelphia for the people to declare their nationality. And that document, which we shared with you all years ago, we may do that in the future again, so you can see that too. So when you think that these people are not aware that they're in breach of treaty and breach of constitution, etc., that you would be sorely mistaken. And also when you see the documentation of even Resolution 75 as an example, 1202, etc., coming from the different chambers of the cities from around the country, etc. They're well aware of their obligations to the Moors. They're well aware that the Moors of the land have been denationalized. But much of their activity has been to get on the right side of history as they see the momentum changing. And as we've said, the world will stop trading with them. You would have a feedback loop, which is what you're having right now. And so you have the dynamics of those responses taking place because what has happened, it has totally interrupted the any legitimacy of what you call civilized construct. And in order to save themselves politically, other nations around the world have to start telling the truth. And then they find themselves actually locked into the de facto Satanist operations of the agencies, which would include the Federal Reserve, etc. This is again why if some of you can do research, and you'll see that with the advent of the military operations going on at North America, you'll see the assignment of Donald J. Trump pulling, and we're talking about the administration, don't get caught up in personalities, pulling the Jesuit order of the Federal Reserve into the U.S. Treasury, which had been defunct since around 21 or 22. So those of you who want to comprehend what they're calling the reset on two sides of their operations of that bird, remember, you're not taking sides, observe, but study, and you'll really have a better comprehension of the ongoing politics. This is why we told people, 3 or 4 years ago, we started telling the people, don't get caught up in the mainstream narrative of attacking Donald Trump, for he is assigned, and you'll comprehend as you go along. Those who had eyes to see saw it years ago. Those who don't get caught up in the narrative. However, while motives or activities may be for other intent, from an ethereal perspective of the restoration of the lost estate, many of those who have ill intent will be actually on the long term working for good, even if they didn't intend to. So this would be in your higher dimensional concepts of chess, and we're talking political chess. But anyway, let's get back to the bill of particulars, the nature of it. So this is the nature of your thoughts and your communications with them, and this will go. And if you notice in the nature of this is in the nature of a quo warranto, while in fact, it's a demand of discovery and disclosure. So look up discovery, and that's an issue for you. Although this is a bill of particulars, and this is presented by an estate heir who and I will not use the appellation, but will make reference to the presentment. And of course, their activities of alleging a debt on the part of the people of the land in relationship to property is in itself a fraud and a violation of Constitution and treaty. So as a point of reference, in the nature of this, I want you all, and you do the research on this, know this as a fact. Quote unquote, property tax is a fraud and constitutional abridgment. It is totally fraudulent. And so everybody who has been so-called paying property tax as well as income tax, both were and presently are frauds. So when they're making claims through their corporate constructs of a debt on your estates, this is in the nature of your conversation back to them. Legally, lawfully competent, then the appellation of the brother or sister in relationship to the bill of attainder, and of course 10,000 in specie, lawful money, and of course that'd be Article 1, Section 10, to which they are obligated. Because remember, not only do the politicians, who are persons who claim to be politicians, have what you call a solemn oath, also the pretending members of the gangs of New York in their fraternal orders of the police have a code of ethics that they must sign to. In the future, for those of you who do some research, you're aware of that document. We'll show you one example in the future so you'll comprehend that they're obligated to constitutional enforcement. And all of these things have been breached by all of these people. So ex-rel, that means ex-recion, and then the straw. And this is where you make a claim of an argument in relationship to the Sister QV trust without claiming to be it. Beings that under military or admiralty operations, they're attaching the straw Sister Q to the living man or woman, and then operating in their venues to make a claim against your estate, converting your estate into the United States Corporation Company and their subdivisions under the guise of government. Keep that in mind, their operations. So in propria persona, in solo proprio, jurisconsults, Moorish American, free white person, lawful heirs, natural freeholders, by birthright, non-U.S. citizen, demandants. Now, and myself and Dr. Naila was talking earlier, and this is back to when you're looking at, or when we're talking about the definitions. So you would be a demandant and not a plaintiff. Keep that in mind. Because you gotta talk proper venue, and keep in mind they will use different word phrases to actually take you into a different jurisdiction that you don't belong in. Because remember, these proper venue arguments, so it's not only the status, it's the venue by which these arguments should be heard. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to go through a few of these things, and I'll just read them through to give you an idea. Because this is in reference to private property on a home, and as you already know, through the fraud operating through these federal and subdivisional agencies, guising themselves as government, etc. They've been robbing the people for quite some time. And so, affidavit of fact and bill of particulars. This bill is presented upon the state of New Jersey, township of Pennsauken, county clerk Gene Padalino, tax collector Daniel O'Brien, in matters to the property, land, estate located, and you say near, and then keep the lot number, because keep in mind, the numbers that they put on the houses are revenue tax registry. People think that addresses is the designation of the buildings, etc. No, they're tax designations. Keep that in mind. And this is why even when you're doing what you call mailing, you say near that.
But you know, just may I interject? Like when I send something via the U.S. Postal System, the way I have to do it, if I put near or CO, it rejects it. It won't let me. It will not let me.
That's because they know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But you got to keep in mind that they know that they're being dismantled when you start moving in this direction.
Yeah, the system rejects it.
But the system didn't reject it. Remember,
they have it set up to reject.
Systems do nothing.
Right.
That car does nothing. Someone gets in it and operates it, and then they hide behind it. This is why they do what you call LLCs and what you call, they give their corporate entities person status.
Mm-hmm.
This is why when you look at the color of operations, they'll say the person means corporation as well as natural person, but the designation must be made clear, lest it be accepted as corporation, straw. That's deceptive. That's connotative linguistics. That's also called semantics. So, A, I demand full disclosure of each of the alleging officials, notice it says alleging and alleged officials mentioned herein, a copy of each individual's delegation of authority, a copy of their license and indemnity bond number, and a copy of their official oaths of office in accordance with, but not limited to, Open Public Records Act, et sequa OPRA, and New Jersey Statute Annotated, Title 41, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and Title 41.2-1, officials authorized to take oath. Also reference Note 5. Public tax records. B, I demand a physical copy of the classification status of the estate property located, and then you have the number there, and the avenue, Camden City Territory, New Jersey Republic, i.e. private/commercial/residential status. I want you to look at all of them, and you will discover that your private homes have been misclassified. That's just a point of reference. 1, I further demand copies of any original contracts or copies of any endorsed consensual agreements that gave rise to and gave authorization to the current classification status of the estate property located at, and then a numerical designation, Road, Pennsauken Territory, New Jersey. Even those little subtleties of the choice of words, all of these create problems for them. As the township of Pennsauken, Admiralty, that's township. They're really talking about ships.
Someone asked in the comments, she says she noticed she was in a township and she noticed to own ship, and she wanted to know if you agree. Is that what it means, to own ship, township? She put,
yes, you can look at it that way. To own, yeah, yes, you can. Yeah. Tax commissioner, tax collector, tax assessor, and township of Pennsauken. Keep in mind, there's corporate entity. Now, attorney. And this is why we always tell people, always name the being. Don't let them hide behind the corporate entity. Speak to them. Did you know that New Jersey State Republic, notice how we say New Jersey State Republic? When we say state of New Jersey, there's two different things, is distinguished from the state of New Jersey, incorporated, of 1844. And that the state of New Jersey is a private corporation which does not have an existing valid taxation law sanctioned by legitimate Congress, which grants the power or the authorization to collect or lay an excise tax on property. We can revert back to when we were talking about income tax, misclassification. And it's back to the nom de guerres too. Answer, yes or no. Now see how we commanding answers from? We're not, right. Now, and of course, if they fail to answer, that's tacit acquiescence. And if they claim a claim against your estate, they got to answer. Rule of discovery, if they say a debt exists, got to show the contract. And then you have a right to the records, right? Of course, they're not going to show it because they've been robbing it. And of course, it creates problems for them. That's why when you present a more proper structured designation relative to the geography and estate distinguished from the corporate entity, they set their algorithms up to reject it because it's evidence of fraud as soon as they accept it. That's why a lot of times when people start correcting their presented status in the social structure, that you'll see them get absolutely angry. Why? It kills the bond on the stock market. You don't have to capture it, you kill it. And if they have that instrument within their possession, it's evidence of their fraud. So, answer, yes or no. If you have there in any objections, with you, any objections to the above facts, then please provide substantive evidence to prove the above facts to be in error, to be false, to be incorrect, or to be untrue. And I demand that you provide the constitutional laws, acts of state, congressional acts, legislation, or provisionary that grants the authorization of the officers of the state of New Jersey Township of Pennsauken tax assessor, then you name the being, Division of Taxation, you name the administrator, Division of Revenue Collection, right, name the administrator, doing business as, a right to collect or lay a taxation on property. They never had it, but just keep in mind, nobody ever questions them. See, so you're not rejecting their position. You said, oh, all right.
Prove it.
What you're saying, where's the contract?
Prove it. Right.
And in the rule of discovery, since they're making it a legal issue, right? By law, they have to give you discovery because you have a right that you don't waive to question your accuser. And you're not a ward of the state, therefore they cannot make you subject to their corporation under the admiralty law. And then, of course, the more you talk to them, the more they're proving that they have no delegated authority. That's why they start getting angry. meaning that people keep going to them for authorization, and they don't, and authorization is not vested in them in the first place. Never was. This is where, again, even in different conversations that we're having today, you can see where people's not clear on everything. They don't. You need to comprehend who you're dealing with. But anyway, now Article 1, United States of America Constitution. It will be the Constitution for the United States of America. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. No state shall enter into treaty, and pay attention to this, you all, and mark this down so you can go over this whenever you're dealing with any persons of any agency that claim authority, that's claiming a tax or a debt on you, and who are transacting business with the Federal Reserve operative private commercial paper, and then trying to put a burden on you when they're already committing treason to even ask you. No state shall enter into treaty, keep it in mind, treaty for, you see that? Treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligations of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. Now you understand why they stay away from original Article Amendment 13, or what they call the 1320. And what is called the Nobility Clause. Now, 15. The request and demand of a payment of a tax debt is a form of extortion and is against the United States of America Republic policy, House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress. All debts have already been discharged, and all gold and silver coin and currency, which is lawful money, has been suspended, therefore making it impossible for a tax debt liability to currently exist. And this is why in the reversionary, we tell the people, make people aware of U.S. Code of Law 92, 95.A and B, etc. Because most people don't know that the United States Corporation Company is bankrupt, and all the debts that they claim that belongs to the people is artificial. It's actually their debt. That's a fact. And so with this bill of attainder, you cause them to have to admit this or get off your back. However, the other problem that we want to clarify and fix among ourselves is make as many people conscious, because as the people become conscious of this and confident in their arguments, knowing that these people are imposters and perpetrators and frauds, etc., and that's not just mere opinion, that the structures of the cabal operations cannot function. Because remember, it only functions because the people are afraid of truth. They have been miseducated, misdirected, misguided, misgoverned, and deceived and raped by the hybrid Europeans faking as government, and by people set among yourselves who claim to be giving you remedy. This is one of the reasons why you see so many people selling different processes, making people think that they're going to get a benefit, when the fact of the matter is the hybrid European will not honor any treaty or constitution because he's absolute total criminal. The real deal is that the people must become conscious so that they themselves stop acquiescence to them. Because we keep feeding them, and then they use what they rob you of to actually structure what you would call injuries against the people. And that has been their operations, whether they're using the pharmaceuticals, biological warfare, which they admit to in Rex 84, or whether they use the fiat, etc., and send some people who claim to be certain religions in targeted communities and buying up property, etc. When they're really not buying it, they're using they're using counterfeit to actually rob the people and then take their actual assets in the construct of the dead pledges, etc. And this is why when people begin to really comprehend what's going on here and they start talking properly, you're going to see, as we were talking in the car earlier today, and you will see that starting to take place because it's going to be forced out of them, that many people, many of you will start discovering, say, so-called student loan debts go to zero. You're going to see some dead pledge mortgages go to zero. And it'll be probably over a period of a couple of years, because of the shock value, you will be receiving back, according to your position and status, all stolen and extorted energy finances that have been stolen through the Satanist organization known as the IRS. All of that must be, by right of law and by reconstruction on the planet and the restoration of treaties and constitutions, shall be restored to the people. Translation, common language, you're getting all your shit back. That's the truth. Now, we've been telling people this for years. However, until people get to a certain level of comprehension, they have no confidence in themselves. They have no belief in themselves, because through dogmata, they have been projecting their concept of idol gods outside themselves. They've been concepting the sovereign divine right that is born within them to a body politic that is totally corrupt and demonic, and they didn't know it. Then, of course, they have people around them claiming different religions and whatever, claim to be goody guys and everything, but are actually parasites working for the Circle Church in Chancery. And all of these things are being exposed and revealed. And as the people become more cognate, divine nature starts fixing their ethereal wiring. So you call the abstract. And this is where you're getting people starting to think more on a quantum level. And so on a lower level of our evolutionary development, people are being more able to comprehend fifth dimensional concept moves. And so some things that were done past tense, even before we took these particular bodies on, with some of our forefathers, you will have a greater comprehension why certain things were put in place, and why some people who you may consider to be in power, who looked like they were insurmountable in relative to their power. That's why you see them getting quite nervous now, because things are a little, what you would say, beyond what's on the common people's mind in their concept of what actually goes on here. And so you'll see what you may think is confusion, but it's actually a purging that's taking place. And so a lot of things, particularly all of the institutions and agencies that have been in place in the name of human services, in the name of public service, etc., we don't have to argue with any of you anymore. You can know and without a doubt claim no stability. You cannot claim any of them to be stable anymore. All of them are broken. Whether you're talking about the religious institutions, religious buildings, or whether you're talking about the economic systems, the economic platforms of the benches, because we keep in mind the bench and the bank are one and the same for the popes under hell. And so when you start, as we told you for years, I'm pretty sure by now many of you beginning to comprehend the true meaning of hell, which we told you to look for in your Black's Law and also in the Bouvier's dictionary, etc. And then you'll be more in tune with the wealth of the world being stored in tunnels in executors chambers around the world, etc., far more than you would ever believe. And also, you will get a concept of a signal that was sent in Philadelphia in a movie scene where you see people going underground, and this woman looking for a coin for her collection, and they find treasures of Egypt going for miles in tunnels under Philadelphia, etc. Well, guess what? It's a movie, but they're telling you the truth. And so the golds and the precious stones, many of the ancient books of Luxor, etc., some were burnt, some were not, etc. Little by little, a lot of this stuff is going to be poured out, or what you call metered out, to the heirs of the estate and to humanity at large. And fact of the matter is, while there's much resistance by the Roman Curia members and their minions among our own, the fact of the matter is that it cannot be stopped. The momentum is on. Like Jurali said, there's a storm out there. Some of the people say there is no storm. The prophet said there's a storm right on. And you're in it, y'all. So don't be upset. Look at it this way. Start taking an observer position. It'll relieve the stress on many of the people who don't comprehend what's really going on. So all the systems are broken. However, it's an opportunity for you all now to get more closely bonded with your families, and for you to also start studying yourselves and becoming more clear on who you are, reconnecting your ethereal wiring, and nature will help you. Sincerity is key. Recognizing that much of what anyone does is an agent of motive. Start studying motive and intent of all people around you, and you will become more and more clearer. And of course, by nature of spiritual development or breath development and ethereal reconnection with the ancient religions, and we're not talking dogma, etc., the cognizance of the accumulated memories of generations are and will, and I say that firmly, are arising. So a lot of questions that would be asked, you will find that you already had the answers anyway. And a lot of what we do has more to do with agitating you to get you to think. Because we're not in the nature or the intent of people being followers anymore. This is not the age of followers. It's the age of human liberation. And although we'll work together to help each other and help one another and love one another, know that all of the keys of development that is needed with you was given to you at birth. And that's the truth. Much of what we do is to aggravate it or to stimulate the soil that these seeds shall open up. And the nature and the memory of your ancient mothers and fathers will find itself to the surface. That's the truth. Bill of Particulars.
There are some questions, so I'll just give you a couple questions. Is that okay? We have a few more minutes, just a few.
Now, closing out here with the Bill of Particulars. Each being, each divine being manifest in human flesh, and even on a citizen scale of those who have been subjected to the priesthood, has been advised that certain documentation was demanded to make a physical inspection and to enable the demandant to verify and to witness the same in order to establish verification of the alleged or an alleged tax debt, and to establish a proper judicial action in accord with law, in accord with treaty, in accord with the constitutional obligations of all said officers, etc. Each divine being or individual, as designated, has been advised to provide the demanded information in order that I may study all evidentiary instruments regarding this matter within 10, or you can designate the days, 7 to 10, whatever you please, days of the receipt of this bill of particulars, demand of discovery and disclosure. And of course, you would have your minister or the vizier of your jurisdiction, and or in other jurisdictions, a notary. And then you would have the appellation and the autograph, and then designated to the issue of the estate, zip exempt, Prince Hawken territory, zip exempt, non-domestic, non-residential, non-subject, non-commercial, Moroccan land, estate of Mexum, Lenapehoeken territory, Sheik Mexum. There you go. And then signed off, y'all. That's an example of the way you should be thinking. It does not have to be exactly like that, but once you comprehend the nature of it, that's a bill of particulars. And of course, it would not be structured as the barrister members would have presented it for you within their admiralty venue. And this is back to what we were talking about earlier, Dr. Nail, choice of words. Mm-hmm. Principle same, choice of words. And of course, as you can see, it's more extensive in its nature, but it's actually just straightforward.
Is that, I'm wondering if that's on the flash drive. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
No, it's, that would be in its nature, yes. That would be in the bill of particulars, yes. So that would be ex dolo molo non obiturum actio.
What did you say to me?
No, that's what that basically means.
Oh, okay. I thought you were speaking.
What that means is out of fraud, no action arises.
Is that on the flash?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. All right. It's under that.
Yes.
Ex dolo nolo prosecution.
Yes. So fraud never gives a right of action, and no court will lend its aid to a man who founds his cause of action upon an immoral or illegal act. Ex dolo malo non obiturum actio.
Okay. Well, we're just about at the end of it.
Because that's what it means, you know. And this is, again, when we're talking about, you know, like another thing that Noble Drew always said, he said, in the nature, and for those of you who may have some doubts or miscomprehension, it will be well for you to read the divine warning by the prophet for the nations. And so you will see why he made statements like along the principles of enforcement of law. He said the day will come when Moors will come into this movement with their eyes wide open and would enforce my law. Mm-hmm. What is that? It's an implication that those who had been assigned had not been doing so.
Well, this is the generation. And you know, one thing I realized about that just this is the generation remark. You know, when you think of a generation, you might think that everybody's sort of in the same age group, but it's not. It's in the same time.
It's in the same
cycle of time. And it may be various brackets of age groups, but there's a
spiritual, or what you call an ethereal connection.
Right.
And what we call the physical age has not necessarily to do with it, that people have generally, because remember, people have been trained to look at things in what you call linear pocket timeline. Mm-hmm. That's never been the true reality. But you can say that to people, but they would not necessarily comprehend it. However, it's easier now because they're experiencing it. For those who know, see, they're not upset. For those who are not in tune with themselves may be a little uncomfortable, but that can be easily comprehended by anyone who's ethereal aligned or well on the way. And the deal of this, all of humanity is being swept into that direction now.
So much happening. So much.
And also notes, it says, whosoever having taken an oath before a competent tribunal, officer, or person, in any case in which a law of the United States authorizes an oath to be administered, willfully and contrary to such oath, states or subscribes any material matter which he does not believe to be true, is guilty of perjury and shall be fined no more than $2,000 or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. Title 18 USC, subsection 1621. Keep that in mind and start going after these imposters who have been defrauding you for generations. Bill of particulars, y'all. Thank you for sharing this time with us.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just want to remind everyone that is listening, February 14th is our National Grand Sheik's 76th solar return. And and we're not going to have anything in person this year again, but we're probably going to have to do it at the next time you're on, which will be a few days after. But for those of you who would like to show your appreciation for Grand Sheik, you could do that through, as you see going across the screen, our Cash App or our PayPal, and you just put in a notation that is for Grand Sheik for his solar return, and whatever you do will be greatly appreciated. Excuse me. And while we have 1,000 folks online. Look, can I do a shameless plug for Tuesday night? Yeah. Because some of y'all,
can you do this for me?
What's it?
And I know that a lot
because we don't have 900 people on Tuesday.
I know that a lot of you all, because every once in a while she shares something with us, and your hair's getting longer. Why don't you do the hair care for us? Because she used to treat us with that every once in a while, and I kind of missed that. Her coming from her poetry book.
I don't need a book for that.
I haven't done this book in a long time.
I was going to talk about something else.
I know. Well, go ahead and talk about something.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah.
And don't forget the chokeberry, y'all.
I'll run the commercial. But no, I'm trying to get some of these 1,000 folks that are on right now that don't. Please tell them to come on Tuesday night.
Oh, yes.
For office hours with Dr. G.
All right.
And this particular Tuesday, all my guests are special. Every last one of them. And those of you who are on there, I know who you are, who are faithful on Tuesday nights, as well as every first and third Friday when Grand Sheik is there. I appreciate y'all, because you don't just come on Friday.
I know some of you probably miss riding with Dr. G when she would just go ahead and bust out like real. Take you for a ride when she's doing something. I kind of miss that too.
Well,
but official office hours is great.
Yeah, official. Yeah, because I have guests. Yeah. I have guests, and the point I was trying to make, this coming Tuesday, which is the 8th, my guest. I think any of you who are interested in quantum physics, anybody out there know about the CERN project? Remember that in Switzerland, CERN, yes. Quantum physics, and all that. My guest is I'm going to say a melanated sister who worked on the CERN project. She is a quantum metaphysician, and the title or the subject matter for next Tuesday is Quantum Physics and You, What's the Connection? All and right. Sister found out that what they're doing with that Hadron collider and the God particle and all they found has a lot to do with us, y'all. And she's gonna drop that knowledge. She worked on the project, and I'm excited about her coming on Tuesday night at 8, as I'm excited every Tuesday when I have a guest. But perhaps since I have all of you on here listening to Grand Sheik, this is it's on the same channel. So if you know how to get here, for
Friday.
Friday.
You know how to get there.
You can get to me every Tuesday because we have exciting guests every Tuesday, and Grand Sheik would love for you to come on other days, right?
Oh, yes.
You certainly would. And as we go out, I want to give you a little bit of information about chokeberry. I'm telling you, it's gone fast, y'all.
Oh,
This
yeah.
chokeberry is like people are already
trying to keep up with it, aren't you?
Yes, people are
Yes.
already reordered. I'm actually, the distributor said that no one has ever purchased as much as I have, and so that's a good thing. I'm kind of, now we're looking at supply chain because it's coming from across the water, but I got some left. We went today to the warehouse and got everything they had. And so we just want to make sure for those.
Yeah, they're trying to choke people out, but guess what? The doc got through.
I got through. And so I could take care of those of you. So we're going to go out with this little promo. And again, like I said, we appreciate you. Don't forget, Grand Sheik's 76th is coming up on the 14th. And we want to, remember him and say how much we love him. And then on next, on the whatever the day is, what is the day? The 4th, the 11th, the 18th, 4 days after the fact, we're gonna celebrate you. Okay. He doesn't look. We're grown, so it's not like we're trying to hide Christmas if we believed in it and stuff like that. We're grown, and we know what he does for us. And so if you appreciate like I appreciate and others appreciate, then you'll do what you need to do. But here we go. All right.
Dr. G here, just checking to see if you've ordered your Chokeberry Plus. What? You don't know what Chokeberry Plus is? Oh my. It is an amazing berry that has the highest ORAC level of most berries known to man. Actually, it's a step higher than elderberry, and it's much, much higher than berries such as noni, goji, and mangosteen. What is chokeberry, you ask? Well, chokeberry is an antiviral, it's antioxidant, and it's an immune system boosting berry. It also provides support and balance for blood pressure, the blood sugar, and cholesterol. Yeah, in one little dose that you would take a day that's very pleasant tasting, like a glass of fine wine, you are going to provide yourself with a lot of protection, especially in these times that we're living in. Like I said, it's antiviral, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory, among the balanced support that it provides for the blood sugar, the blood pressure, and the cholesterol. You want to know how you can get yours? Sure. Just text CB3L to 302-345-0500, and we'll shoot you out an order link. You want to get yours today, especially these times we're living in. We need some added support and protection. So I highly recommend Chokeberry Plus. And let me say this: Chokeberry Plus, and the chokeberry is also what's known as the aronia berry. But all of the chokeberry products out there are not created equal. We've got probably the best tasting, and you'll feel it the moment it hits your taste buds, and it actually does some things as soon as it hits your mouth. I'm not going to talk about that, but it's going to be good for you, good for your family. You can get a 60 serving 3-liter box shipped out within 2 to 3 days, and it's going to come by priority mail insured. So again, text CB3L to 302-345-0500 and get your chokeberry today. Peace.
Deeper and deeper I go. Find what it is I should know. It's just a matter of time to reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. reawakening mind. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. And you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine.